Coming to you from Strings and Things Studio in Ventura, California, I'm Katie.
I'm Anne.
And I'm Karin.
And this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
We hope you're reading along with us this month. We read a book that was my choosing, recommended by a couple of our customers who had enjoyed it, was Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. I have the blurb here that I will read for us first before we jump into anything. This is the debut novel for Bonnie Garmus. It says, Chemist Elizabeth Zott is not your average woman. In fact, Elizabeth Zott would be the first to point out that there is no such thing as an average woman. But in the early 1960s, and her all-male team at Hastings Research Institute take a very unscientific view of equality. Except for one, Calvin Evans, the lonely, brilliant, Nobel Prize-nominated grudge holder who falls in love with, of all things, her mind. True chemistry results. But like science, life is unpredictable, which is why a few years later Elizabeth Zott finds herself not only a single mother, but the reluctant star of America's most beloved cooking show, Supper at 6. Elizabeth's unusual approach to cooking, combine 1 tablespoon acetic acid with a pinch of sodium chloride, proves revolutionary, but as her following grows, not everyone is happy, because as it turns out, Elizabeth Zott isn't just teaching women to cook, she's daring them to change the status quo. So I guess we can start with your initial reactions. Did you enjoy the book? Anybody?
You go first.
I thought it was delightful.
Yeah?
I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it enough. I thought it was pretty slow.
Yes.
But I enjoyed it. Yeah, I think if I had picked it, my metric is always like, if I hadn't had to read this for the book club, would I have finished it? Because I have grown to let myself not finish a book before. I'd be like, no, I have to finish this before, because I would feel bad about it. But now I don't do that anymore. But I would finish this if I had picked it up, apart from the book club. So I liked it enough.
I think this is a beautifully written book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised to learn it's her debut because it's
Oh, wow.
really, really well done. But I hated it.
You hated it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hated it.
Okay.
Interesting. It's going to be good talk.
I didn't enjoy the emotional journey.
Yeah,
I felt like it was just like, almost trite in like the emotional journey.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I don't know how to put it into words, but every emotional point it hit for me that was tragic, I felt manipulated by the story.
Okay.
I don't know if that's like my point of my personal like brain chemistry right now of I'm just feeling grumpy and this book hit me like when you watch a comedy when you're not in the right mood.
When you're not in the mood for it.
But I hated it.
Okay.
I forced myself to finish this book.
Okay.
You guys think it went slow?
Yeah.
Try it at 3 times.
Yeah.
The first time I listened to it 3 times. I could do it if I concentrated.
I think I was at 1.5. It was too long. Which I don't even remember how long it was, but it was too long. And it was, yeah, I know how you feel, and I don't know how to put it into words, because I felt sort of bland about it, which was upsetting because it got glowing reviews from people that I appreciate their opinions.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead.
So, Elizabeth herself is not particularly likable.
Right.
And that, I think, was sometimes hard to get through for me because I enjoyed her story in context of the history that she was going through. But her as a person, you could see it's not just that she just wasn't a likable person by men or women. She was kind of a very blunt, harsh.
Yeah.
Why should I make you feel comfortable? Why should I have social niceties?
Right.
They're a waste of time.
I can imagine not wanting to have social niceties toward people who are actively trying to, put you down or demote you in your job or disvalue the thing that you think is important in your life. But to extend that beyond to everybody that you interact with. She was a hard character to relate to because she didn't act like a human. And she was a hard character to...
Very robotic, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually didn't mind... I did not mind the personification of Elizabeth Zott.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like the web that was being very artfully woven.
Uh-huh.
Like, nothing disparaging about the talent of this author and the talent of the craftsmanship of the story. Because I think it's really neat. It seems like the opening day is the day that we're brought back to as the wrap-up happens. And that's done by connecting the notes that she puts in the lunchbox to her daughter, to the note that Madeline hides at the beginning of the book. I thought that just very, very good craftsmanship.
Yeah. She's a good writer.
But it's like, oh boy, there's this big hidden thing that we know about that and that created a tension. It created tension, which I'm sure was the author's desire, but
not a good kind of tension.
I didn't enjoy getting there.
I think part of it was you knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, it's like, just get there already. You're just making me feel tense and uncomfortable, and you're making me upset about, like, you're pulling on my heartstrings for reasons that
didn't seem justified.
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, because you there was no real big surprise, at the end. You kind of figured out what was happening, and then when it happened, you were like, well, why haven't you figured it out yet?
Yeah, you're so... It's like, it's my favorite quote from Lois and Clark, is it? The 90s sitcom, or 90s show about Superman and Lois.
Yeah.
I think it's Lois and Clark. And there's some time traveler that comes back and says, "Oh, Lois Lane, the most galactically stupid woman in the universe." And so, like, okay, Elizabeth Zott, are you like the most galactically smart or stupid person in the universe?
Yeah. But there are a lot of people that are intellectually brilliant and people stupid.
Oh yeah. The first question I have, this is from bookclubchat.com, so thank you, bookclubchat.com, for posting questions that I can steal. What is we're sort of already talking about, what is your overall impression of Elizabeth as a protagonist? And then, why was chemistry the right career choice for her?
Well, I mean, I love chemistry. This is why it's, like, so confusing in my own head that I did not enjoy this book. And I wonder if we listen to this book again, respectively, in 25, 30 years, would we feel differently about this character? Why? The people who are recommending this book to us, one was a professional during this time frame, and maybe lived some of Elizabeth's challenges, and the other would have been a child, Madeline's point of view. So, I mean, just thinking of two people specifically who enjoyed this book, so maybe their point of view is either seasoned with experience or seasoned with life experience,
Yeah.
And would we feel differently about this book down the road?
Bonnie Garmus is older than all of us.
Yes.
She's, for her debut novel, I don't know how old she is, but I think maybe that the age range that she's in, maybe, I don't know, for whatever reason, enjoyed it more. That I felt like this was sort of promised to be like, it wasn't what I was hoping it was going to be, right? And it didn't seem that in depth. What am I trying to say?
I don't know. Like, how do I explain why I didn't like this book?
I didn't get the resolution that I wanted from any of these terrible things that happened.
No.
I wanted her to... I mean, it was the 60s, right? Yeah. Or the 50s. Like, it wasn't going to happen the way that it would happen nowadays, because and I didn't experience it back then. But I wanted her to stand up and be like, don't talk to me that way. Or to stand up and be like, you can't do that. But she was operating within the terms that she had to operate within, even though the book would lead you to believe that she doesn't care about that. Yeah. But at the same time, we still didn't get the resolution that I wanted for all those terrible people.
Yeah, I mean, that is a pretty powerful resolution, that Miss Press gets to run the personnel department, that she gets to continue her research. It's satisfying in a sense.
Yeah.
But what about the serial rapist?
Yeah, I wasn't satisfied enough.
No. But when I think of this, like, we went on a trip recently and we were talking about different things we saw. And I don't think I was talking about this book in particular, but my husband asked, well, what about Mad Men? why do people love to watch Mad Men if the guys, the acting there are so bad? And this was happening in the time of, if you remember that show
Same.
Mad
Yeah,
Men,
it's the
that
same
time
time frame.
period,
Mhm.
where men, there really were, they could behave badly and they could get away with it because there were no real consequences for
Right.
them, whatever they did towards a woman.
Well, same. There's a rape scene in the first scene of in the first season of Mad Men.
Mhm.
Nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
Right.
And I didn't like Mad Men at some point. Like
Yeah.
by the fourth season,
Yeah.
I was gone.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree.
And I didn't watch it to its completion.
No, same here. I don't even remember the last season,
Yeah.
but I think some of it too was, yeah, it's just got tiresome. But why did I watch it in the first place?
The shock of showing it for real is what drew me in.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it. Like, they did it beautifully. So that's where it's like, I did want to finish this book.
There was a glamour to it.
Yeah.
But in her experience, she's not experiencing the glamour side of it. She's got the ugly side of it. So, anyway.
I didn't mind Elizabeth as a protagonist.
Okay.
And I may never be able to articulate why I did not like this. Okay. Because I don't, on the face of it, I don't mind Elizabeth as a protagonist. She has clear boundaries.
Yeah.
She knows what she wants. She doesn't compromise what she wants.
Yeah. I like the idea of Elizabeth.
I feel bad for her too, because she is in a no man's land of she's beautiful, so women hate her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's smart and has every right to assert her intelligence, and that's why men hate her. Like,
right.
She could never win.
She's not
exactly.
She's kind of motherly, but kind of not. She's not a traditional mother by chance. You learn that she didn't want to be a mother, but yet she is a mother to this child. It's not the life that she wanted for herself, but she is making it her own.
Yeah.
And I did like that part about it. I still am not necessarily a believer that she could be this unknowing crusader for women's rights while doing this cooking show. I'm not really believing that the appeal of her style of show was real myself.
So I guess that is where you have to like suspend disbelief, and maybe that's something I don't like, because I have like the history of Julia Child is so like it's precious to me, even if she was not a perfect person by any means. But every time we get to learn more about Julia Child's life and her struggle and what it really took, like the newest incarnation of telling her story, it makes me so emotionally overwhelmed that maybe this is too precious of a characterization to like. I was trying to explain this to my husband, and like the Dolly Parton podcast.
Yep.
I never finished it. Even though it's a work of brilliant art.
Yeah.
Because it's
Dolly Parton's America, I think is what it was. Yeah. Something like that.
Just so emotionally overwhelming to me. I could only enjoy the first episode.
Yeah.
I could never come back to it.
I understand that.
And that's the like emotional welling I have for Julia Child's story. And obviously this is a riff off of Julia Child.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly a different characterization. Very different story.
Yep.
Completely unique. But it's still taking us into a nowhere land of. Also, maybe I feel a little angry that we didn't have someone like Elizabeth Zott earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what? And then I'm mad at her for leaving it.
Exactly. Like you started it and then.
Yeah. I mean, you have in your pocket a woman you encouraged at 38 years old to go be a heart surgeon.
Exactly.
In 1961.
Yeah. And then you stopped.
Okay.
And you don't get the sense that Elizabeth is doing any of it because she wants to empower women.
No.
Like,
she's just doing it to pay her bills.
And at some point she realizes, like, that's what's happening. And she, like, is like, oh, this is a thing I should think about. But for the most part, it's not like she just thinks that everybody should be equal because that's what's right. But she never wants to be a crusader for that, or
this
a
is just a bridge
for it.
till she gets back to her real life.
Right. So that's, I think, undercut why I didn't really care as much about her in like a feminist sense, which, you know, feminism back there is very different than what it is. I don't know what wave that is because the waves confuse me, but yeah.
But she wasn't trying to be
it might be second
that's the thing.
wave.
She
Yeah.
wasn't trying to be a feminist. She was just in her brain.
Well, I think
She's
Elizabeth...
she says there's no reason why we shouldn't be allowed to do this thing that
Yeah.
our brain can do.
Right. I think
that's
Elizabeth Zott is kind of her way of thinking. She does not think of herself as a woman. She just thinks of herself as a thinking
As
person.
a human. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A thinking human.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like, in that way of thinking is informing my personal understanding of how someone could identify as non-binary.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't like think of your gender in every choice you make.
Right. It's
And
just a
Elizabeth
thing.
like almost never thinks of her gender, except I guess in her relationship with Calvin, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And who knows? I'm reaching into a part of the character we didn't get to know.
That's true. We don't know,
but
how
she
he
doesn't
felt.
like apply gender to her.
To the way she moves through the world.
Right.
Yeah.
She is a scientist, not a female scientist, not a
Mhm.
woman scientist. She's just a scientist. She's a chemist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This question says she enters a male-dominated field and it's a constant uphill battle for her. Have you ever worked in a field like that, or have been in a similar type of situation, and can you relate to what Elizabeth went through? I am happy to say that I have worked exclusively with women in my professional life, and have only ever had female bosses, so I can say no, that I cannot relate to this, but I mean, every woman can in some sense, like, you know, in school or in, you know, family dynamics or some other sort of community besides just the workplace, you know.
I thankfully also have never. I've worked in mixed gendered and perhaps more masculine dominated field when I worked in finance. But
yeah, I was gonna say that too. About the bank.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
like I worked my angles at the bank, you know? And I knew enough to inform myself to like not get shortchanged on my salary and things like that.
Yeah.
Until I was ready to leave that field, you know. So thankfully I didn't fall into any dangerous like potholes along that way, I guess.
Yeah.
And the field I work in is like so tiny now that
right.
But I use the same tools of educating myself and making sure that I know what my value is.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as, and I know what role I want to play too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not looking for, like I'm happy with what I have. I'm not looking for more. So no,
Yeah.
I have not had experience that.
Yeah.
I haven't personally experienced it, but I've witnessed it. Like when I worked at the bank, there are certain jobs that women were not considered above. Like you would never have seen a female manager of the bank. You would see,
I think the
person, yeah, between us,
yeah,
the person in charge of the tellers could be that, you know, that's as high as far as a manager goes that a woman could go. A woman could definitely be in sales, whether they're selling CDs or other financial products, but there was a certain dress code that they were expected to have that men didn't have to follow in order to, you know, the more they showed their legs, the better they were expected to wear nylons and a certain level of, you know, a skirt to sell financial products better. But that might have also been being in downtown LA near the financial district.
Nah, because when I worked in banking, the regional manager in downtown Los Angeles was a woman. Extremely powerful woman.
So
many women under
and it
her.
might be the difference of a decade. Yeah, because mine was like mid 80s. Yours was probably
late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
So there's enough time between us that
when I did that, keep in mind when I did, there was no Saturday banking. You know, you had every holiday, so there was a different work thought too.
Banker's hours does hold something.
How did her unusual upbringing and volatile relationships with her parents impact how she approached relationships as an adult? So her father is a what is the word?
Evangelical flim flam artist.
Yeah.
I think she calls him a flim flam
Flim flam,
artist
yeah.
somewhere in there.
Yeah, he's selling
snake oil.
Yeah,
Yep.
basically.
Yeah.
And her mother was along with it until she ran away and abandoned her family and lives in Brazil or something.
Something like, well, is it she? Because on the family tree, doesn't it say that there's a picture of a woman eating tamales?
Yes.
So somewhere that they'd eat tamales, either Mexico or Central America, I guess.
Yeah.
So she doesn't have very good examples of what parenting could look like.
Right.
It makes for an unusual parenting style.
I would say something I like about her is that she seems to parent instinctually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely.
And I appreciate that about her, that she speaks to her child and to the dog. I mean, I will say my most favorite thing
Yeah.
is the point of view of 630.
630.
630 saves the book.
Why do you suspect that the author decided to include the viewpoint of their dog? That's one of these questions.
Someone had to be sane.
Yeah.
Someone had to be relaxed.
The normal person
the normal
is the
one.
dog. I
Yeah.
love the dog because his dialogue is not like any other dog's dialogue in any other thing where it's
Yeah.
like, I love my human, I'm a dog, oh look, a squirrel,
Yeah.
he talks
oh,
like
no, that's not
a
safe.
well-educated regular, member of the family, which
Right.
is what Elizabeth, considers him, right?
Yep.
He knows what, 900 words or something by the end of
Something
the
like
book?
that, yeah. Which is scientifically proven.
Yeah.
Like
that dog bunny on the internet.
Yeah. Because every time my kids try to talk down to the dogs, I'm like, they understand.
Some
They're
dogs.
probably laughing at
Some
you.
dogs are smarter than others.
Well,
There are some dogs that are really dumb.
one of the and I have one of them, but I still believe he understands a lot of words. One of my dogs has shown that she will love and nurture a stuffed animal,
Mm-hmm.
Aw.
which was a total surprise to us because she doesn't I think she doesn't like squeaky toys
Okay.
because she takes them, chews on them until the squeaker's done, and then abandons them to the other dog. I think she really doesn't like the squeaker.
Uh-huh.
And so she took this stuffed animal and we're like, oh, it's your baby. And then my husband thought it'd be fun to take the baby and hide it every once in a while.
Oh.
So I'm like, I'm pretty sure she understands you guys when you're like, I'm going to take your baby.
The traumatized dog.
Yeah, that's what we were arguing about whether or not she understood when you monsters were saying, oh, could it kidnap her baby.
I do wish that there was a 3D model of her kitchen, or in particular. I want to know. I would like to take a tour of her house.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see how
Her lab is a
the
kitchen.
lab fits in. I mean, it replaces it, right? It's a bungalow. So I kept picturing actually not dissimilar from my own house, which is it's 1,000 square feet, an open,
I kind of imagine
living
it like your
room.
house too.
yeah, open living room and a kitchen where there's just a half wall
Mhm.
between
That's exactly what I was thinking.
So, but more square shaped than mine. I have a long galley kitchen, which
Mhm.
more square shaped, a little more open concept.
What is the definition of a bungalow?
That's a great question. I picture the houses more north or east, more Oceanside Avenue.
Yeah. Yeah.
That are just even still a little smaller than my house.
I was thinking
Let's
bungalows
find
as
out what
being
that
kind of
is.
like a studio, or really close
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
a studio with maybe really tiny walls.
Okay, so I didn't look it up. Is Commons a real place?
Oh, I don't know. I can look that up while you're looking up what a bungalow is.
Is it because it's in near San Diego? Is it the city that Veronica Mars took place in?
It doesn't look like it's a real place.
A bungalow, a low house with a broad front porch having either no upper floor or upper rooms set on the roof, typically with dormer windows. So it doesn't say exactly the
So a
size.
small single-story home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like a cottage or a studio.
What do you think about the eventual romance between Elizabeth and Calvin? And why were they a good fit, aka full of good chemistry?
Well, he's attracted to her for just the normal reasons.
Right.
She's gorgeous. And I think since she talks plainly to him and is interested in the same things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that.
She understands him in a way that even his peers don't.
Mm-hmm.
She gets him, and for him, who probably was very lonely growing up, feeling like nobody got him.
Mm-hmm.
Having someone who you don't always have to explain yourself to, you can say something and they just get it, is very attractive.
Yeah.
Why do you think that they say he's a person who he's known, the only thing people know about him really is that he holds a grudge? I never saw him really displaying in the book any kind of mean-spirited grudge holding, get back at you behavior. And I don't know if they were just jealous or if that was just never explained once Elizabeth came along.
The only one that I can think of is the grudge that he held against his father, but I don't know in what way that impacts the way that, like, his coworkers think of him that way. Like, that's his defining, feature, is that he can hold a grudge, right? But, like, the only one that comes back in my mind is that he thought his father had abandoned him.
I'll bet I'm thinking about it, because that is true. It's plainly stated. A chapter begins somewhere in the middle. It's like, he says in his, like, when we're learning his point of view, he doesn't understand why people think that about him, because the only grudge he holds is the man he thinks is his father.
Yeah.
I think it could be because, like, they describe his dating life a little bit, that it was maybe when he was bored of people, or they didn't serve a purpose for him, and he just would move on, perhaps. And
maybe you read it as a grudge.
Right, yeah.
I could see that. Calvin proposes to Elizabeth, but she says no. What was behind her reasoning for turning down the proposal? This was one part of the book that I was so incredibly frustrated by, because Elizabeth was just like, no. And doesn't ever explain to Calvin really why she doesn't want to marry him.
Oh, I thought I did catch why.
But he kept coming back to, like, well, you should just marry me anyway. And she's like, I don't want to be married because of this reason. And he literally wouldn't take no for an answer, right? I mean, at some point I think he gave up, but it wasn't expressed outright that I could feel, and maybe I just am misremembering, that, like, he never understood her point. And I'm like, I think these two are supposed to be so good at communicating with each other that for this one part, for some reason, they can't get past it. I don't know.
Okay, here's my thing. He walks through the world with the privilege of a white male who has doors open for him because he works hard, doors open. He thinks that's just that. He doesn't understand he has no concept, even when she tries to explain to him that any connection she has with him, even her dating him now, puts the credibility of her work in danger.
Yeah.
And that is so important. She wants her work to be her own. It's the thing that it's like if you created something and you're super proud of it and you never get to have ownership of that right. creativity or credit for that, or it's always marred by everyone, no matter how much you prove it was yours. Always saying, well, yeah, but don't you really think it's because of him? I mean, they already gave her cred for that. Just by dating him. It's just, and I can understand in that time period, it was so rare to have a woman chemist, and then. And she, I think between the two of them, she really was the smarter of them. She could see beyond those walls in the problem solving, and they complemented each other that way also. But she knew that when she did make this giant breakthrough, she didn't want to have to share it, even so much as to hyphenate her name.
But what was Calvin even doing? Because
whatever he wanted.
Yeah, but he didn't have, like, a clear goal of research that he was working on, and he was supposed to be, like, so brilliant.
Yeah.
But it's described as, like, people would go into his lab and be like, he's just sitting there staring off into space, like, what is he doing?
I've always wondered.
What did he produce for his work?
Well, I mean, he wrote papers that got him nominated for Nobel Prizes, but we never really learn about his work.
Right.
No, so we're never told.
That's true.
I've always wondered that about research scientists, and especially mathematicians.
What do you do?
Yeah, like, how do you because this is such an American way of looking at your value. Like, how do you prove your value when you're a research scientist? I mean, I know one of the ways is that publish or perish.
Yeah.
But how do you, like, show up for... Because, like, I can write a term paper real quick. I know that writing a scientific paper is not like writing a term paper.
Right.
But Come on, isn't it though?
Well, okay, look at the boss who was ahead of
he
that,
stole it.
and he stole lots of people's work.
Yeah.
So clearly, some people cannot write a paper well enough on their own to sell that. I think Calvin's biggest value, at least to the company he worked for, was his name alone brought money in.
Yeah.
He could go his whole life in working there and not produce a thing because his name alone gave him value. And yet how did he get that? I agree. How did he get that name to begin with?
It wasn't his work that was bringing in money. You're right in that it was literally his name, because his work was always funded by his birth mother, right?
Yeah.
By the foundation that she ran, and maybe other grants and people who, had supported him, but the main money maker, he was the main money maker for the research institute, right? And she was the reason why there was money involved with him.
I'm not sure about that. I think there's a gap in her hearing that he's the memorial fund at the boys' school, because he got a rowing scholarship because the boys' home had a rowing
program.
So, and she doesn't know that he's alive or have a sense of that until he's already an established scientist.
That is true.
So I'm not sure. I don't think money mattered to him.
No. It obviously didn't.
Yeah.
Because by people who don't ever have to worry about money don't have to.
But he didn't really have any money of his own. He had money because of prizes he'd won.
Right. He didn't come from wealth.
Right.
He moved to this place to work at this institute that was lucky to have him, apparently.
Yeah.
Because he had offers from lots of other places, but he chose to work there because it had perfect weather.
Right.
For what he wanted to do. It wasn't, he could have made a lot more money somewhere else, but he never did.
Yeah. It didn't matter to him.
No.
I like the circles of connection that were written around Calvin. How, like his connection with his pen pal that then broke off, but then somehow she got connected to later in life. How I did like how it was written, these circles of almost like spirals. They're there and then they're gone and they come back.
I think that's part of what frustrated me. Is
you were waiting for them to circle
come
around.
on, get there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think you were given too much at the beginning to know where you're going, and for it to be waiting for it to circle back in some way. You didn't necessarily know how it was going to get there, but you knew it was going to come back around.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right, I've been waiting. I guess you need to ask your next question. Go ahead.
Oh,
because I'm waiting for you a
like
reaction to
prompt
something of you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, ask your next question.
I wanted to talk about the metaphor of rowing in this book.
How about you just using the erg? Working so hard and getting nowhere.
Right, and getting absolutely nowhere. Did either of you, and you probably didn't because you were probably done, listen to the interview with the author
I
at the
listened
end?
a little bit, but
Okay.
I didn't. I think I turned it off about
rowing,
right when she's about to talk about rowing.
Okay, so I have, this is a quote from the author about her use of rowing as a metaphor for balance, essentially. She says, in a boat, how well you, because she is a rower herself.
Oh.
In a boat, how well you cooperate with each other is the difference between winning and losing. It isn't who's the biggest, it's who cooperates best with their teammates. Everyone rows as one. The oft-recited statistic from Elizabeth that we are 99.9% the same happens to be true, and it's also part of rowing. Things like systemic racism, misogyny, religious zealotry are divisive elements, and they're not based in science. They're cultural constructs, and when they're used to control people, to keep some in charge and others under their thumbs. Imbalance in a boat spells failure, and the same is true for everyday life. When we choose to create situations dominated by one race, one gender, one religion, one outlook, we create imbalance, and the result is havoc. And I thought that was pretty beautiful, but I didn't get it from the book. I got it from the interview with the author after the book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, I see what you were doing. But I felt like I should have, I see what you were doing earlier than that.
Well, see, so when I was in college, I thought I would like rowing. I went to an informational meeting for rowing.
Oh, wow.
They all sounded wonderful, like, and amazing and bonded, and that probably would have been my key to staying in college, honestly, was finding a good group of people to bond with.
Okay.
And one of the girls on my floor also went to the meeting, and we were gonna like go to practice together the first day. And she knocked on my door at an ungodly hour. And I was like,
Nope.
no, have fun though. And I did not join rowing. So I laughed every time, like every reference to the idea of like getting up early, punishing your body.
Yeah.
I took that to just be more of a way to characterize Calvin
Yeah.
and his doggedness and
Mhm.
commitment to
Mhm.
what he valued. So like I mean I can see what she was trying to paint with that by tying him to rowing and showing us the rowing community. But I just took it as a way to characterize
Sure.
Calvin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the girl who knocked on my door went on to be recruited by a different college and get her college paid for.
Could have been you, Anne.
No,
If you had woken up early enough.
No. But I'm proud to have known her because, and my daughter, who there's a free rowing program in Ventura County. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Oh, wow.
honey, it's like playing an unusual instrument.
Yeah.
you
I know somebody who is involved in that program.
Yeah, it's super cool.
The story features a great supporting cast from the neighbor Harriet, who eventually becomes like an extended family member, to Elizabeth's producer Walter. Who was your favorite supporting character and why?
Well, Harriet
Was pretty great.
I mean,
Harriet.
because obviously 630 is a main character.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, no, I love Harriet. I adore Harriet. I
Mhm.
love that she doesn't like voice her opinions.
No.
But she has a lot of wisdom to share.
And she will share it if you ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I love that she finds her own path to a better life
Yes.
and a happier life.
That was so sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked Harriet a lot. From the moment we met her, I liked Harriet.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I liked Walter, who
Yeah.
eventually came around to figure out what he was supposed to do with his life, right?
Yeah.
He's like not really great as in his role, but he is in his role because he's a man, so he's like, I guess I'm in charge. He's not good at being in charge, right? And then he finally learns, like, I think what I'm good at is helping women, like,
Yeah.
supporting women, or,
Yep.
helping them, and what can I do to be better about that? Like,
Yep.
he literally realizes that.
I also like there was a quiet tone to something. He knew that the network head was a bad and dangerous person.
Yes.
Mm.
And he always knew he needed to protect his.
Yes.
He didn't do the right thing to get rid of him,
No.
but he knew that he couldn't leave women alone with
Right.
him. And I
Yeah.
appreciated that stewardship,
Sure.
even though it's not particularly productive.
At least he didn't just look the other way.
Right.
He
Right.
knew what was
Let
going
people
on.
go into the lion's den, per se.
Right.
I felt like if
Snake pit.
Elizabeth's personality was sharp and orderly, he was the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
He was gooey and messy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just always a little damp.
I mean, I think of the characters of his daughter and her daughter,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like, it's like his. I pictured his daughter as the bully, and wondered why, but she wasn't really a bully.
No,
No,
she wasn't
she-
at all.
She just because at first
She was just
she's
kind of a
painted
sad little.
because first she's painted as someone who's just taking some other girl's sandwich, but I don't think it's that.
She wasn't stealing her sandwich.
No.
No, that was totally Elizabeth's misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Because when we hear about Amanda eating Madeline's lunch, we're told that Madeline gives it to her.
Right.
Not that Amanda takes it.
Okay.
I mean, that's how I remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Elizabeth is upset about it, not because somebody is stealing her daughter's lunch, but because her
It's a precise measurement
right,
of
she
exact
figured out exactly what
nutrition
this child
for her
needs to eat.
I don't know what your child needs to eat, but I know exactly what my child needs to eat.
right.
She
And
did
that-
the
and I made it.
equation.
I did-
Which I also enjoy because I love I love stoichiometry, the balancing of chemical equations.
That's my favorite part of
Right.
chemistry.
Same.
I like it because it's
make it all
algebra.
work. Well, don't call it that because then I don't like it anymore. It's just it's
What if I called
makes sense.
What if I called algebra stoichiometry?
Well, then I think someone would write us a letter. I don't know. They're different things.
I was more of a biology kind of person.
I
than
love
a chemistry
biology,
person.
too.
Oh,
but-
see, I didn't like biology because it's just so much memorization and so messy.
Oh, I
Whereas
don't mind that.
chemistry is linear. I loved
Yeah.
chemistry.
That's what I like about stoichiometry is the linear nature of it.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm waiting for you to have a distaste about the precocious child. That's what I'm waiting for, Katie.
You know that I always have
Yeah.
a distaste for the precocious child. That was one review I read was like, this child is too precocious, but like, isn't every child in every book a little too precocious? I'm like, yeah, you're right. I mean, she has to be very smart
Yeah.
because her parents were both very smart.
Yeah.
So I let it go a little bit than, just a child in any other book
Yeah.
that's just extra smart
Magically
for no reason.
delicious.
Right? I'm
just
like,
'cause,
come on,
yeah.
child. But this, I actually liked Mad a lot.
Okay. Oh, good.
Mad, not Madeline. Mad.
Mad.
Yeah.
What about that nurse? The nurse that had the nerve to write that on the birth certificate just because she was ticked off at Elizabeth.
Well, Elizabeth was mad.
And she was mad at her situation, of giving birth and being a single parent and
Right.
going through all that. And I understand, plus the hormones and the emotions of just giving birth.
But she didn't
But-
understand what the nurse asked her.
She didn't. Okay, but the nurse, the
nurse
nurse
did
knew.
it anyway, but-
the nurse understood
Yeah.
what she was doing when
Yeah.
she put that on the birth certificate.
There's this famous story in my husband's family that his father is a fourth, and when he was born, his mom didn't want him to be so and so the fourth, and she apparently wasn't real with it when they came to like name the baby
Oh, no.
when the nurse came.
Yeah.
And so they were like, what's this baby's name? And the dad was like, well, guess what? He's so-and-so the fourth. And his mom, like, never forgave him that, like, I didn't want to name my child that.
Oh.
So, I could see that.
Yeah.
That's a thing that happened back then.
Yep.
Twilight, or what do they call it? Not Twilight,
Well, there was a point where they did like
but
there was
she
a time.
was not anesthetized.
No,
no, she
Could
wasn't.
not afford it.
No,
But the nurses are probably used to dealing with.
there
people
was
like
a
that.
time where they anesthetized her to the point that my mother-in-law does not remember giving birth, nor did she
Right.
see her child for 3 days because it took that long to get all the drugs out of
Yeah.
her system.
Between my
Because
mom,
that was a belief at the time that women should not experience pain in birth.
between my mom having my brother and sister in 69 and 71, that you're still being knocked out.
Yeah.
To 1981, 84 for my brother and I, she went natural.
Right. That was the thing back then, because that's what my mom did, too.
Yeah. So, but that's the time span.
Yeah.
From
Mm-hmm.
late 60s, early 70s to 80s, it being a choice. Also difference in the father being invited into the delivery room between
right.
those decade.
My
That decade
mother-in-law's
between.
like, she would have been appalled if apparently my father-in-law would have loved to be there for the birth of his
Aw.
kids. He wanted to be there. He wanted to be part of that. And she's like, no. I don't even want to be there. I don't want you there.
Yeah.
Why would it? It was not something fathers were allowed to do, even if
Yeah.
they'd wanted to. It's
Yeah.
not, they had no,
That's
I know-
not how things were done, for sure.
Mhm.
I know they told my husband wanted to be there, and they said, because with the firstborn, we had a C-section, and they said, this is your chair. You will sit on this chair. If you pass out and fall off the chair, we will step over you, but we will not help you until everything else is done. Just know that.
Why did Elizabeth agree to host the cooking show? And why did the show resonate with women across the country? We kind of touched on the second point,
Yeah.
but why does she agree to do this cooking show? Because it doesn't seem like at any point it's something that she is excited about.
She just quit her job.
Yeah.
And she's facing a reverse mortgage on her house, which that's a bad situation to
She
be
hadn't
in.
quit her job yet, I don't think, because she comes from the Institute to go yell at Walter at work to be like, your daughter needs to stop. I came here on my lunch break, and your daughter needs to stop eating her
3
lunch.
days.
Two different things.
3 days in between. So she yells at Walter 3 days before they connect. She had just come home from quitting
Got it.
when
Okay.
she takes Walter's call.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand. Oh, yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. You're right.
You're right. 3 days before? Never. No. This sweaty guy keeps trying to hire me. What?
And she says, like, at the very beginning of the book, like, that's the day that we, like, come in on, right? And she says, like, I did it because I made more money. That's the reason why I took any job that I ever had was could I make more money doing this? Okay, great. But she certainly needed the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to try her coffee.
What do you know?
You could go to any really pretentious coffee shop, in some hip part of town and get the same thing.
But is it gonna? No. Will it be amazing like hers?
I mean, they
Because
think so.
There's no bitter. There's no bitter.
Yeah.
Which even with pour over, it you get a lot more like a fruity taste and less bitter, but there's still like a real high acidity. So
Yeah.
I wonder about this mythical coffee.
we were camping and I brought I have a USB rechargeable grinder that I charge it up just before, and every morning we had fresh ground pour over coffee.
Very nice, very nice.
Why did Elizabeth eventually leave the cooking show?
Because it wasn't fulfilling anymore.
Yeah.
And she had the opportunity to go back to what she really wanted, didn't she?
She didn't.
Not at that point.
Not at that
No.
point. Oh.
She left the cooking show on the turn of a dime.
Yeah.
Because of something Harriet said about like chemistry has changed or something like that.
Mm.
And then she put her resume out there and nothing happened. And nothing happened
Right.
until she gets what she thinks is a prank call from Miss Frask.
Mm-hmm. I love Miss Frask.
So what I love most about Miss Frask is, first of all, it's a brutally honest portrayal of other women hating each other.
Yeah.
Because they're
beautiful, because they're more talented, because you know, because of misogyny,
right?
Like
because of the patriarchy.
I really finally come to that honesty in myself of evaluating, like, why do I resent such and such person?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized it's because the way the men around me frame
misogyny.
her. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way the men around me frame her. I realized that's why one of the reasons that I think a lot of women hate Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so many other women in power. Anyways, I like that. Honesty.
She was a good character to enjoy reading because she comes to terms with her own like internalized misogyny, right? And at some point she realizes, like, what the hell am I doing?
Yes.
This has never gotten me goddamn anywhere.
Yes.
I didn't like Miss Frask, but I came to love Miss Frask because I got to see her evolution.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know if it was purposeful, but the tone of voice that the reader gave Miss Frask is very close to the portrayal. You're gonna have to help me with this. We love her. She's a knitter, and she is an actress, blonde, lanky.
Yeah.
She voices a secretary on Archer.
Mm-hmm.
And every time Miss Frask spoke, I heard Greer.
Yeah, Judy Greer?
Judy Greer.
Yes.
So Judy Greer voices this character on Archer.
Yep.
And she's a like, dumb secretary. And every time Miss Frask spoke in this reader's voice, I could hear, that character.
That's so funny.
And
yeah, she was perfect.
That's perfect.
The first time I knew that I just loved Miss Frask was she's like, they're going to let me go?
What the heck? A present for you.
I got, here's everything you never knew that you should have known.
And they
I'm
both
spilling
hate
it for you.
each other so much until they realize, like, why do I hate you so much, you know? And
we're
that
better
was
together.
I did like that part, and she was a good character because you did hate her so much at the beginning, and you knew exactly what sort of person this was. Like, you have met many people like this, and this is the sort of person that would have existed so perfectly in that day and age. You know,
she was taught that the only way that she could get ahead was by backstabbing other women and climbing on them to get ahead,
or any value that she had in society was her looks, her not her brains, not her anything else that she had to offer, just, what she could offer to a man that he wanted her in whatever position, she was in, typist or secretary or whatever. And what did she call herself? She's a personnel expert or something like that. Like,
and an almost psychologist.
Yes.
I did like her, actually, because, like, first of all, adult friendships are hard to find.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And figuring out other women is hard. Like, And I love that they finally figure each other out.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
in the end,
they figure out what they're doing.
She's there to help her and throw a buoy to her instead of the ankle cutting,
Right.
abuse she gives her at the beginning.
Right. What did you think about the ending overall?
Finally tidied up.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It just took a long time to get there, I felt.
It did take a long time to get there. And I didn't know exactly where it was going to end. What was going to happen for these characters. You knew that something good was going to happen for Elizabeth. She was going to get to research again in some way that was, like, justified, or, like, in a way that she was going to be recognized. I didn't know what that was going to look like, but it was, yeah.
Yep.
It was tied up.
So how old was Mad at the end?
Maybe
It's
she
like-
turned 5. She's still in
She
kindergarten.
was young, yeah.
Okay, so it just figures that in real life, I think it takes a long time to get that. It kind of, I know we wanted it
Yeah.
tidied up a little quicker, but it wouldn't have been very realistic.
True.
Yeah,
You
but
know.
I've read books that spanned over, much longer time periods.
That's true.
Yeah,
We're over too soon.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Maybe she just wanted to paint a little more time to paint these little vignettes of characters.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I wish I knew my own head better to be able to express why I feel any vitriol to this beautifully told story.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't any sort of, not that there wasn't a plot, but it didn't work like a traditional book that you read where it's like beginning, middle, end. And we have read many other things with timeline jumping, and that's a really popular, narrative tool that people use nowadays. And things jumping back and forth, like the last book you read, The Vanishing Half, like that jumped back and forth,
A lot.
Yeah. So that's a pretty popular thing to have happened, but it wasn't told in, I mean, it was, I don't know. I share your sentiment that, like, I don't know how I feel. Because it was well written, I think the characters were well written, I think that it was an interesting story, but it was slow in that, like, where's the thread? Like, where are we going,
Yeah. And yet at the same time, we knew where the threads were of, like, this is all going to get tied in a bow with, she's going to find out that Calvin's from money and mom's been looking for him. Like, we knew those things were coming in a sense.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I did
I'm not a
not
professional
know.
literary critic.
I don't understand.
I didn't really know where the story about the story of Calvin. So much of it was about her that when we got to hear his story, I found that little. I thought that was like a side shoot for a while until I realized that there was a connection. Like when they had the different people that they introduced at the funeral, and then they didn't have any meaning connected to them until later in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But how absolutely horrifying was the revelation that not that his father didn't, or it wasn't his father, that his family didn't want him, but that he was lied to by the whoever of the boys' home that was like, they don't want you, they came, they saw you, and they're like, no, that's okay, when in reality that's all that they wanted, and they were lied to, and he was lied to, and that was the most heartbreaking part of the story for me.
Yeah.
But why? They didn't really like the boys' home didn't really like having him.
No,
they
it was just to use him to get money.
They just
That's
got money
what
from
it was.
him.
As
Right,
long
the
as he
memorial
was
fund for him not even being dead.
No
Yeah, that was terrible.
monsters.
Yep. My last question for us is, did you feel like you learned any lessons or anything else from reading the novel? Do you have any favorite scenes that we haven't discussed yet?
I think that this book exposes some very important things. I mean, not things that we didn't know about, and yet things that aren't fleshed out. For like we talked about, women resenting each other for the world that men build around us. I think that was important to have fleshed out. Also, I forget, as do all the men around Elizabeth Zott, that just because you're worthy and smart doesn't mean you get where you're supposed to go in the world. So like I see it on death certificates all the time. Highly educated women who are homemakers.
Yeah.
And not that there's anything disparaging. Again, a lesson related again and again in this book.
Sure.
And I was talking about it one time with someone who would have, I don't know, be in this right age group, and they reminded me, like, maybe it was somebody who like had a PhD or something, and in psychology, I think, because anytime somebody achieves that, I'm like, oh, what'd they do? And then you hear homemaker, and it was pointed out to me that maybe that person wasn't allowed to pursue their career.
Not that they didn't pursue it.
And I think about
it wasn't really an option.
Right. Every time that was like illustrated to me, and I see women with excellent educations, because it's not just about getting your MRS. You know, you don't achieve academic excellence just so you can get married.
Yeah. Or not even achieve academic excellence, but go to college to meet a pool of people.
Right.
Like, no ambition to do anything with it.
Yeah. It's just not, I mean, I'm sure there are women who have, certainly.
Yes.
But I don't think that's what drives someone to academic excellence as a woman.
But if you didn't know that there were other opportunities out there, or that, not that you didn't know, but that they didn't exist without somebody paving the way for them.
Yeah.
That would be a viable way for you to ensure that you were taken care of.
Right. And I think that this book does a great job of illustrating that point.
Yeah.
That don't take for granted what you can do.
And
because that wasn't easy before.
And don't take for granted or judge women who nowadays, with every availability that they have, choose to take that path.
Yeah.
To stay home and raise a family, or to, not work and be a homemaker, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
That's a choice that she was able to make.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I was reading something infuriating once, and the point of it was like, we should go back to the way things were in the 50s or whatever, because things were so great back then, and men were men, and women were women.
For who?
Exactly. And none of that was mentioned in this thing that I read, and so I commented on it, and I was like, well, I guess I better give up my career and go home and have babies that I don't want, and stay at home all day, which I also do not want to do, because that is not something that I would ever enjoy doing. Not that I do not love children, but I do not want to stay home and raise my own children that I don't ever want to have. Right. So it's easy for me to take for granted the fact that I am able to choose that easily, whereas people back then weren't able to. And there is still pushback from older generations of people, I will say, to someone my age saying that they don't want to have children. It's like, well, you just, like I've heard before, like, yeah, but maybe you just don't know, or maybe you don't want them yet, or maybe you just, like, no, I understand the choice that I am making, and it is a valid choice to make, that I do not want to be a homemaker. Yeah, I would be a terrible homemaker.
Not every woman is meant to be a vessel for a container for another life, and it doesn't mean that and pushing that onto someone who doesn't want that
that creates some really terrible mothers.
Yeah. And then angry, sad,
resentful children
who become angry, sad adults who perpetuate the cycle. Yeah. I think it's so beautiful that we have so much more choice and freedom to go in either direction. I want more openness of, like, your choice is okay.
Yes.
Because I think women on all those sides, like, because there's several sides of this. Right. There's, like, the woman who wants both things. Yeah. Career, family, household. Woman who wants no children, family, household. There's this,
you have infinite combinations.
Right. Like, forget dodecahedron. What's an infinite hexahedron? Yeah. And that each of those choices is valid and good.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, and that at different times in your life, you're going to want different things, you know?
And listening to your strengths and weaknesses, and not falling into the cookie cutter mold that still exists today and is still pushed to many young women nowadays. And it's not even that, like, it's not a thing anymore. It is great we have these choices, but it took me a while to realize that these were not the choices that I personally wanted to make. When I got married, I was under the assumption that I was going to have children because that's what I was supposed to do, or that's what people expected,
you were
right?
told.
Like, and I remember somebody in my church telling me and my husband, asking us if we were going to have kids, and at this point we had decided not to, and they said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I will pray for you." And I was like, I don't need that. I'm okay. I don't need you to pray for me. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment that that you're worried for me, but that is not what I need prayer for.
Yeah.
Like,
And how
it's
sad,
okay.
and how sad that they think that your only existence is to procreate, that there's no
Yeah.
other value in your life beyond more little lives.
Yeah.
There's plenty of lives in this world.
That's my point in saying that it existed back then, but it still exists today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
We were rewatching Hidden Figures recently, and there's a character that she'd already been married. She has 2 kids. She's one of the computers there, and there's a guy who's interested and who assumes that, you know, he's proposing to her, and assumes that when, you know, he does, that she won't have to work anymore.
Right.
That she's working because she has to, as a widow with 2 children. And it's like, no, there is that.
Yeah.
But she also has this amazing mind.
Yeah.
And what a shame. How many generations of women who have these brilliant, who could not be fully and mentally
imagine how much
in the healthiest place they could be,
right,
by being their whole self.
Imagine how much farther along we'd be in science and technology if we had let these extremely smart people do their extremely smart people work.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead
Instead of saying, oh, because you have 2 breasts and other body parts, that you are now limited to this box of choices.
Right.
Yeah.
That you could be, it's okay but once you get married, you have one sole purpose.
Yep.
And it's like, wow, how limiting.
Or the other side of it, another thing too is like, let's say you are a woman who wants a family, or you find yourself in a circumstance where you are going to carry a child. Like, why can't we adapt our workforce? Because this gets touched a little bit too when she has to come back to Hastings.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you think you're just going to come back into this? You've been out of it for 4 years sitting on your laurels. Like,
because you fired me for being pregnant.
right. And even what if she had taken a leave of absence for 4 years to be with her small child?
Right.
Like, I wish the workforce were more reasonable about, like, you have your whole life ahead of you.
Yeah.
To be a
productive member of society.
Like,
give me a second.
It would just be amazing if we could accommodate in these more meaningful ways.
Yeah.
But it's weird to me. It bugs me that they only ask that of women. You know, they would never. I mean, a man who becomes a father, he's also responsible for the raising of this child, but he never gets any of the judgment and any of the harshness that. I mean, I knew that, like, when I was raising when my kids were little, there was a lot of judgment for being a stay-at-home mom. It's assumed that I must be too stupid to be, in the business world. So there, that somehow your brain cells are left behind if you stay home with kids. You're a lesser productive person, even though you're raising the next generation of people, and you're trying your best. But then there was a bunch of, I know there was a story about, there was many women who were in the workforce, who realized, okay, I'm a full-time worker, but I'm also a full-time mom, because all the stuff I would normally be at home being able to do, I still have to do, even though I'm out of the house 40 hours a week. I mean, so I really got 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting, because they saw their mothers, who were some of the first women in the workforce trying to do it all, that they had songs about fry up the bacon, cook it up in a pan, and always be great, in a sack, and but it's just exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I appreciated what this book lays bare.
Sure.
Yeah.
I want to wrap it up by saying that maybe, you know how some books are better than movies,
Yes.
but some storytellers know how to take the best from a book and turn it into something better.
Yeah.
My favorite example of this is I read Jaws by Peter Benchley, and I hated it. And I love Jaws.
Right?
So Steven Spielberg is excellent at taking some source material and making it into a better thing. Not that this isn't great source material, regardless of what our opinion is of it.
No, that's why I started off. It's a beautifully done
Yes.
book.
They are making a TV series based on this, starring Brie Larson as Elizabeth Zott. That's exactly what I said. I was like, yeah.
Oh, and
Brie Larson is perfect for it.
Men already treat her
Right?
the way that...
Yep.
It's perfect.
It is perfect. It's
Perfect.
excellent casting.
Perfect.
Your homework is to go watch Captain Marvel.
Yeah. God bless her. I need to watch Room. I've never watched Room.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see that. I mean, it's a movie you watch once, I think.
Yeah, probably. Okay, well, that is it for our book review. So I guess we can jump into what else anybody read this month. Anne's rummaging.
Sorry.
What did you find?
I finally got back to Lee Bardugo's universe, and I listened to King of Scars, and I'm in the middle of Rule of Wolves, and I guess she's written some other little like novellas to fill in her Grisha verse. So I'm looking forward to getting those listened to.
Okay.
She's a very artful storyteller, and I like being in that world. So if you've not listened to any of the Grisha verse, it's great stuff. Lee Bardugo. So one of my sewing students brought this book, The Act of Sewing by Sonia Phillips. It's a very simple book. I'll pass it around for you guys to look at. It's has 4 basic patterns, two tops, a skirt, and trousers. But it's also like how to riff off of it and how to alter them. And I think it is like extremely full of possibilities.
Okay.
And she's really, really just very adorable.
She sounds familiar.
She's going to be teaching at...
She's so cute.
Teaching at Stitches SoCal, I think.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's just a very cute book.
This is a very pleasant book.
Yeah. Yes. Because I got excited about it, seeing it with my student, and then it came to last night, and I'm like, what? I would never buy this book if I flipped through it in Barnes & Noble. I bought it because someone else was excited about it, but I'm not like sad about it. It's a really crisp, concise book that I think you could play a lot with. So The Act of Sewing by Sonia Phillips.
Oh, cool. That's a very
she is so cute.
pleasing book.
She's so cute. It feels like her style, for our listeners.
I thought she was the creator of the 100 Acts of Sewing patterns.
Oh, that makes sense.
Which are some nice basics that that she gives you tips on how to hack and adapt.
Her name sounded familiar.
I thought so. I thought Acts of Sewing, the Act of Sewing, the 100 Acts of Sewing patterns.
Which I'm never attracted to those patterns. But I'm
But now you might rethink it.
Yeah. So I'm going to play in this book for a little while.
That looks fun.
Very cute and very approachable and well written. Like the pattern instructions are pretty well written. What really sold me is she assembles pants in the same way I do, which is side seam, crotch seam, inseam, not side seam, inseam, insert, crotch seam.
Okay.
So I'm in. Except I disagree with her about sleeve insertion.
Okay.
She does the sleeve
you
insertion.
Need to write your own book.
Oh, nah. She does sleeve insertion with side seam of the top and side seam of the sleeve, and then she matches up the 2 holes.
That seems harder.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I like to do the arm side. It is, yeah. So I was like, all right, we're in together on the pants, but I disagree with your top. So, but it's a beautiful book. And it was pretty cheap on Amazon.com. It's like $17, which
that's a good deal.
That's really good.
That's
for
a cost
hardback.
of 1 pattern,
right?
Essentially,
It's less than the cost of a lot of patterns.
So, and it has full size patterns already printed.
Love it.
So easy to trace. So that sold me too, because who loves tiling patterns?
Yeah.
If I'm in the right mood, I'm
Sure.
willing to like take it as part of the process. Okay. What have you read this week, Karin? Or this
Oh, we're
month?
doing 111.
Well, it's your. I get to choose the next book, and I know
She hasn't
I'm
read it
holding
yet.
it.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
holding it. Okay.
Okay.
This is the next book I'm cuddling.
So I reread Dread Nation, and then I read the sequel to it that came out called The Deathless Divide.
Ooh, who's that by?
And that's by that's by Justina Ireland. It's the two books come together. Imagine if the Civil War really ended because the dead on the battlefield rose up to eat the living.
Oh my god.
And emancipation didn't really happen. I mean, the blacks were freed, but that was so that they could bring so that the former slaves are now going to become the ones that are trained to fight the restless dead. And while once again the whites can go on and be comfortable. So there's that.
That sounds amazing.
I started the Dream Blood duology by N.K. Jemisin because someone had recommended it, but I'm only like a couple chapters in. But I started a bunch of books. But the book, I did actually take the physical book called The Deep by River Solomon. It's a new author to me. And it's kind of like these are the stories of mer people.
Ooh.
But these mer people were born by the enslaved mothers who were captured in Africa, and they were pregnant and they were thrown overboard, and that's a real thing that happened. And then as their babies are born, because they were used to breathing from the liquid of the womb, it transitioned into the liquid of the ocean.
Oh, I
And
like
so,
that idea. I wish it
but
had
they
been
have
true.
their own people. But the trauma is too much for the people to carry. So they have historians who are sensitive to the rememberings to their story, and they carry all the rememberings of time going. And once a year, because the people can't live with no memory of who they are, they have a ceremony where they relive the memories and get their fill, but then they give it back to the historian. And this last historian was only 14 when she was put upon with this. And anyway, so it's really good. It's called The Deep. It's narrated by David Diggs, and if you
I love him.
and he's so good. But even the book, even though it's by River Solomon, all the people that also were part of the narration, I guess they contributed. It's a very small book. It's like the whole thing is only like 3 hours long to listen to, so it's not a long book at all. And I'm also reading War Girls by Tochi Onyebuchi. I can't say the name properly. Onyebuchi, I think.
Okay.
It's all Afrofuturism stuff.
That's a very fun genre.
I'm really enjoying this genre. I'm getting my books from a place up in Oakland called Sista Sci-Fi. And they specialize. I think I've talked to them about them before, but anyway.
What's his face? Reading Rainbow. LeVar Burton. He does a storytelling podcast that's amazing. LeVar Burton reads.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he reads from that genre a lot, and it's fantastic.
I read a book called Cover Story by Susan Rigetti that I found on the Cloud Library when I had finished something else I was reading and was looking for something else. I think I talked about my previous book already,
Yeah.
but
Which sounded great.
Cover Story by Susan Rigetti. It was like, okay, that sounds fine, I'll listen to it. And it took me a minute to get into, and the whole time I was frustrated by the main character, but there ended up being a very good reason why. And I'm still thinking about it, and like, I regret not choosing it as a book club pick, because I would really love to talk to somebody else who has read it. So if y'all read it, I want to talk to you
Say what
about
the title is again?
Cover Story by Susan Rigetti. It's told, which I didn't know when I started it, I don't know what you call it, in the same vein as Where'd You Go, Bernadette, where it's like emails and text messages and
epistolary.
There you go. Thank you. And diary entries and things like that. And I was like, why is it written like this? Just because it's interesting, but there is a reason why it's written like that. And I was like, oh, okay, no, I really liked that book. And it was a fun read, so I would recommend it.
All right. Well, squeeze it in. But you listened to it.
I listened to it, which
after reading that, do you wish that you had physically read it?
It didn't really make a difference in the comprehension of the story.
Okay.
But it was a little annoying that the narrator read out every single timestamp and
but we wished for that in the past.
I know, but it was like this long chain of emails. It was like subject hello, and then response was hello, and then it was hello, hello, and it's like, I understand we're still in this email chain, but so that was a little frustrating.
Okay, well, now we know what that's like. We've asked for it in the past. Now we know what it's like.
I appreciated all the current timestamps because I was like, okay, I know exactly what week we're in, what month we're in, what's going on, but I really enjoyed it.
Awesome.
So, drumroll, Anne, what are we reading next month?
Okay, I'm really excited.
Okay.
Because I was in a bad mood about this book.
Okay.
Again, even though it is a beautifully written book.
We found a lot to talk about, too.
Right. Which is an important thing in a book club book. So I wandered around the bookstore yesterday, and I'm like, what do I want? I thought I wanted something kind of funny and light. I thought about like a Where'd You Go, Bernadette kind of. I can't think of the author's name right now, but I kind of lingered there for a minute.
Yeah.
I did take into consideration time, because when I went towards sci-fi, I was like, oh, I have a copy of Andy Weir's Hail Mary. And so maybe that would be a good one. Because Andy Weir is the author of The Martian, so I'm sure you guys have experienced either the movie or the book.
I've read other stories by Andy Weir. I like
Artemis
his style. Artemis is so good. all of the Artemis books. Is there more than one? I think there's a sequel.
Oh, okay. No. Oh, to my knowledge, there's only one. I would love a sequel.
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I would very much enjoy a sequel to Artemis. It's a heist story, so I love a heist.
Well, maybe I'm not.
Artemis is a current moon mission too. That might be. So then I'm like, okay, well, that was like a 17-hour book, so I saved you all from that, even though it would have been a wonderful journey, I'm sure, and I recommend it. So near Hail Mary was Octavia Butler's books. And I love Octavia Butler. I was thinking about, like, when I talk about this, how I'm going to describe her. I mean, she is one of the best science fiction writers that ever lived.
Okay.
She is known as a female sci-fi writer. She is a Black science writer, but she is just one of the best sci-fi writers ever.
Period.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, you can qualify her that way, any way you want. But she has some of the most innovative imaginings of science fiction and, like, how aliens would be and how our interactions would be. That it's so imaginative and different that I'm so excited. So I've chosen Fledgling. It's a very short little synopsis here. Shori is an apparently young amnesiac girl whose alarming needs and abilities lead her to a startling discovery. She is in fact a 53-year-old vampire, genetically modified to walk in the light of day.
How awesome!
The only survivor of a vicious attack on her community, with no memory of her past life, Shori must now struggle to rebuild her family and learn who would want, and still wants, to destroy her. A captivating novel that tests the limits of otherness and questions what it means to be human, Fledgling was the last book Octavia Butler wrote and is among her greatest and most beloved works. I want to read her author side too, just in case people are not familiar with her. A writer who darkly imagined the future we have destined for ourselves in book after book, and also one who has shown us the way toward improving on that dismal fate. Octavia E. Butler, 1947 to 2006, is recognized as among the bravest and smartest of contemporary fiction writers. A 1995 MacArthur Award winner, Butler just transcended the science fiction category even as she was awarded the community's top prizes, the Nebula and Hugo Awards. She reaches readers of all ages, all races, all religious and sexual persuasions. For years, the only African-American woman writing science fiction, Butler has encouraged many others to follow in her path. Fledgling was the last novel she wrote, immediately following The Parable of the Sower and Parable of Talents. I'm really excited about this book.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
I think it's a 12-hour audiobook, so it's a little on the long side, but
Octavia, Butler.
I read the thing that sold me on her as I went through her trilogy. I'd have to look up the titles, but it's a trilogy about
I think I've got it.
this alien world and
Seed to Harvest. It's got Parable of the Sower,
no.
Covenant, Lot's Children, Canaan.
No,
Okay.
it's a different one.
'Cause that's another trilogy, I guess.
Yeah, and that's on my to reads. Parable of the Sower is no, that's not it.
That's not it.
Sorry. That just came. It's the Exogenesis trilogy. It's Dawn. Dawn is the first book in that series, and there's 3 books. It's amazing. It's an amazing imagining, and talk about spanning time. It spans hundreds of years of human history, or imagined human future, rather. So I'm hoping this book is the kind of thing where we live in it for a while and we'll be sad that it ends. That's
cool.
my hope. I probably just oversold it, but I hope you guys like it.
That's cool.
Okay. Well, we will meet with y'all again next month when we talk about that. In the meantime, you can listen to our regular podcast episodes or catch up on one of our many other book club episodes. You can always go back to if you've read one of those and see what we think. We are by no way experts, but we enjoy discussing. So
we play 3 on a podcast.
On a podcast, yeah. And as always, we are interested to hear your take on any of the books that we have talked about. So even if it's an older episode, if you have thoughts or anything you want to share with us, please don't hesitate to do so. And we will catch you next month. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Strings Unraveled is a production of Strings and Things Studio, with Anne Leckervin-Cazzoli, Kaity Von Rader-Fraker, and Karin Wilmoth. Recorded and edited by Kaity Von Rader-Fraker. Find us online at stringsandthingsstudio.com or on Facebook or Instagram at Strings and Things Studio. You can email us at stringsandthingsinfo@gmail.com.